Hello, I'm John. Welcome back to Adventures in Miniature, and today we're going to paint this model up in the order of the Ebon Chalice. Here we go! So, to spare myself the trouble of painting white robes, I primed the model in grey cere. I figured that it would be easier to do this and paint the armor black than spending an eternity trying to get back up to white from a dark base coat. As a result, I'm going to have to paint the armor black. For the most part, the armor pieces are fairly separate from the robes, so it was pretty easy. With the black set to the side for now, I can base the inside of the robe in Rhinox hide, being careful not to get too much on the outside and thus saving me more work later. I'm going back to the armor with Corvus Black, which has a slight blue tint to it. That should help bring it away from just a flat black and hopefully make the armor panels easier to see. Then it's time to get to work on the red for the inside of the habit. I'm starting with Corn Red, which over the brown base has a nice deep color. Once that's on, I'm going to use Mephiston Red to start the layering process up to my highlight color. I don't need to be super precise here, and I'm trying to let some of the corn red show through in the deepest folds. I'm using a glaze of Mephiston Red to help tie the two colors together and hide my blend a bit more. Glazes take a bit longer to dry, so while I wait for that, I'm going to start dry brushing my base with Lead Belcher. I went for an industrial theme this time, using some cross-stitch mesh to create a grilled floor and a few bits of sprue and some cables I made from green stuff. After the Lead Belcher, I used Typhus Corrosion to dirty up the metal. Now that the robe has had some time to dry, I'm going over the most prominent folds with Evil Sun's Scarlet. And then I mixed in some Flash Git's Yellow to make an orange for my final highlight. I've been trying to go bolder with this technique lately to see how a stronger highlight affects the end result. I haven't worried myself too much with trying to make it a beautifully smooth blend, and I'm quite happy with the extra pop that it gives the fabric. When this is done, I can clean up the outside of the robe with grey cere and base any white details on the armor, before it's time to pick out the studs with some black paint ready for the silver later. I already feel this one is coming together a lot quicker than some of my previous paint jobs. Using Lead Belcher, I'm going to start in on all the metallic parts of the model. Some of these will get a coat of gold later, but I've found Lead Belcher is one of the most versatile paints I own, and it ends up on almost everything. Time to satisfy that part of me that loves painting studs. For some reason, this is my favorite part on any model. Now I'm going to start highlighting the armor with Dark Reaper, another color I've grown really fond of. I'm using it to go over all the edges of the armor and help make a smooth transition for my final highlight color. I especially like doing this on the thigh plates, which is one of my favorite parts of these sculpts. I think it's partly because it hints at the armor being a real thing that has to be put on a piece at a time. I'm using a dry brush to put a light pass of Dark Reaper over the flat surfaces of the armor to help brighten them up a little bit. I find that using a flat black can be very boring and it's hard to convey depth. So I find it's actually better to have a very dark color that you can lighten up and leave dark in the recesses. After this, I can use my final highlight color of Thunderhawk Blue to pick out the edges of the armor. I'm especially fond of doing this on the shoulder pads and ankles, but really every hard edge gets a little bit of attention. Onto the gold details using Pro Acryl Rich Gold, literally my favorite gold paint at the moment. And now it's time for the corset. I'm doing a rough highlight of Mournfang Brown over Rhinox Hide to add some wear to the leather. I find it helps sometimes to have it in your mind what each part of the model would be made out of, which helps inform my color choices in a lot of cases. It's back to the robes again, this time to use a bit of titanium white to highlight the topmost folds. You don't need a lot, just a few raised edges. I've found that grey cere does such a great job of emulating white, but it also has a lovely smooth finish, and it leaves you with somewhere to go when it comes to the highlighting stage. More Lead Belcher, this time for the bolter. I'm not worried about making a mess, as I'm going to be going over the casing anyway. Speaking of which, a few quick coats of Dark Reaper on the casing to help it stand out from the armor. Then a little bit of fiddly arm gluing. Luckily, plastic glue takes some time to set, so you've got a little bit to nudge the arms into place. Onto the face with a coat of Bugman's Glow, and a little touch up for the eyes using Wraithbone, I went with Night Questor Flesh for my next layer to give a darker skin tone than I usually do. I had initially planned on brown hair, but I changed my mind later, so I'll come back later to do the hair again. A quick dry brush on the backpack along with the metal details before it's time to get that glued on too. I wanted to try for a more auburn hair color this time, so once the brown was on, I used some Jacaro orange to add a highlight. The head goes on and it's time to do the screens and lenses. Red for the targeting sensor, which I then highlighted with a tiny dot of orange in the top corner. Then Caliban green for the screens, which I highlight up with Warpstone Glow and then Moot Green. Time for some weathering now, and I'm going over parts of the armor with XV88 and then some lead belcher to create a chipped paint look. I'm still perfecting it, but you have to work on something to get better at it. I'm using a dry brush to add a dusting of grey dirt onto the robe. I normally use browns for this, but I feel that the industrial base would be more oil and concrete dust than mud. I'm going over the base with a healthy dose of Nuln oil, and then using what was left on the brush to add some oil stains to parts of the robe that would be closest to the ground. A few dabs of Nailac oxide on the metal to add some color variation, and I'm done. Overall, this was another surprisingly quick scheme. The white was much easier when I approached it more as a light grey instead of slapping coat after coat of white onto it. I think I enjoyed highlighting the red on the robes more than anything else on this model. I'm really pleased with how the base came out. This is probably the most scratch-built one I've done so far. It was definitely fun trying to fit bits of sprue together and creating different surfaces, although I think I got carried away making pipes and cables. This project as a whole has been a really good opportunity to push out of my comfort zone and try new schemes and basing ideas. Hopefully, I'll be able to put together some basing videos using what I've learned from this project. So that's us done for now. I hope you got something out of it. Please like, comment and subscribe. I've got one more of the major orders to go and then it's on to homebrew orders. Hopefully, I'll see you there.